He's in the f***ing room!
Boom.
The movie begins on a night in Utica, New York. A garbage collector known as Clean works his night shift, collecting trash, emptying bins, and doing his part to keep the city tidy. As he works, he picks through discarded objects and salvages what he can repair. Whether his nickname contrasts with his job, refers to his 8 years of sobriety, or has a deeper meaning is left open to interpretation. By morning, his shift is over and he begins driving through the streets. He monologues about the decay and filth that define his world.
Sea of filth, an endless onslaught of ugliness.
Crime runs rampant in his neighborhood, and the authorities have turned a blind eye. Illustrated when a patrol car uses the observe and ignore method and indifferently passes by as 3 men gang up on one. Haunted by the mistakes of a violent past, Clean sees himself as just another part of the filth around him. Once a cold-blooded assassin, he now struggles to leave that life behind.
No matter how hard I try, I can't wash away the past. I've got blood on my hands. I'm stained. I'm dirty.
After donating a meal to a scrapyard's 4-legged resident, Clean heads off to his NA meeting. His sponsor, Travis, a former soldier, shares his own journey of addiction and recovery, hoping to inspire the group. As Clean listens, memories of his own violent past resurface. In his mind, a deeper struggle plays out, one that suggests his true addiction is violence itself.
Rush of violence is better than dope, better than blow, better than peace. If you're lucky, it'll linger, but come down this quick.
Back home, the weight of his grief lingers, the loss of his daughter and the crushing guilt that never leaves him. He fills the hours by duct taping a salvaged Electrolux vacuum back to life, working out using a sack of rice and preparing a simple meal of chicken breasts. Driving through the neighborhood, Clean swings by to check on Dianda, an orphan living with her grandma. As she waits for the school bus, he hands her the same chicken meal he always brings her.
Ever think about eating fish once in a while? Just mix it up a little.
Fish is dirty.
He has a soft spot for her, treating her with the warmth of a father because she reminds him of the daughter he lost. In return, Dianda gives him a handmade bracelet before hopping onto the bus. The next stop is a thrift shop where Clean presents the vacuum cleaner he repaired. The shop owner, a loyal patron of Clean's junk-to-treasure business, slaps $45 into his hand. Just then, a customer walks in, inquiring about a pistol-grip shotgun. The sight of the weapon freezes Clean in place and stirs something deep inside him, an old craving, a hunger, not unlike an addict facing temptation. Shaking off the feeling, he moves on to another store and spends part of his earnings on 3 cans of paint. Determined to improve the neighborhood, he begins covering the graffiti-stained walls of an abandoned house with fresh color. The next morning, as he hands Dianda her packed lunch again, he notices a group of thugs breaking into the very house he painted the night before. In his small effort to restore the neighborhood, he had unknowingly provided a freshly cleaned hideout for those set on tearing it down. While asleep, Clean is startled awake by dreams of his late daughter. Overwhelmed with emotion, he looks at her photo as memories start flooding back. Later, at his sponsor's barbershop, he opens up about his struggles. Travis, well aware of the dark deeds Clean has committed and the heavy guilt he carries over his daughter's death, advises that sometimes it's best to let certain things go, or at least find a way to live with them. Elsewhere in the city, the feared and deeply devout drug lord Michael awaits the release of his son Mikey from prison.
This is my boy.
When Mikey finally steps out, he barely spares his father a glance, his attention instantly drawn to his friends, who greet him with a flashy chain and open arms. Watching this, Michael is disappointed but swallows his anger. They drive away and leave him humiliated in front of his men. Back at work, Clean receives word that thanks to staff cuts, he must cover more routes than usual.
Sorry, boss.
Without a word, he grabs his route list and begins his rounds. At one stop near a seafood restaurant owned by Michael, he spots a group of armed gentlemen loitering with clear business intentions. His eyes turn to Michael and they each make a pointed effort to hydrate the earth. Michael's way of asserting dominance and Clean's way of showing he's not shaken. Clean realizes a drug deal is underway, but he keeps his head down and moves along. The next morning, Clean spots Dianda walking to school. She mentions that the school bus no longer runs because the neighborhood is basically a crime theme park. Feeling responsible, Clean offers her a ride and she hops in. While in the car, she notices the bracelet she made for him dangling from his keyring. Curiosity gets the best of her, and she asks why he's always alone and never seems to date. Clean simply shrugs, admitting that romance has never been his strong suit. Later at Michael's restaurant, his son Mikey gets dropped off by his friends late as usual. Dad wants him to learn the family business, but Mikey has no interest. Lesson of the day is extracting hidden pouches from a stuffed fish. While teaching his son, Michael realizes they're 5 cocaine pouches short, meaning their Chinese transporters are skimming off the top. Mikey tries to brush it off, arguing that 5 pouches are nothing compared to the total of 200. That attitude doesn't fly with his father, who grabs him and imparts a hard-earned lesson.
You let the small things slide, you be failure. Okay, Dad.
The next day, Clean decides to fix up an old bicycle to help Diana get to school. Once finished, he drops it off at her place, locking it with a combination only she knows. Just as he's about to leave, out comes Ethel, Diana's grandmother and one of his acquaintances from his NA meetings. She tells him not to worry so much about Diana because she isn't his responsibility.
You know, we don't need anyone to save us.
Just trying to save myself.
Ethel pauses and reminisces about the good days before gangs took over, back when the neighborhood was alive with children's laughter. She then adds that she knows he's a good man. Clean, of course, doesn't see himself that way.
No, man.
While at Travis's barbershop again, Clean is wearing a bitter smile as he remembers the time he bought his daughter a bicycle. The memory lingers for a moment, but soon even that smile fades from his face. Meanwhile, the drug lord is sitting in a church pew, listening to a sermon about Jesus feeding 5,000 people with just a few fish and some bread. Outside, the Chinese transporters have arrived again. As soon as Michael steps outside, he decides it's time for a lesson. He grabs a hammer and beats one of the Chinese workers to death, forcing Mikey to watch. It's his way of showing his son how to handle anyone who tries to cheat them. Turning to the rest of the Chinese, he warns them to check their scales unless they want a similar lesson. Later that night, while emptying Michael's restaurant dumpsters, Clean notices blood and the broken glasses of the murdered Chinese man. Though puzzled by the scene, he continues with his work. Not long after, Michael emerges from the shadows, offering him cigarettes and a bit of cash as compensation for the inconvenience. Clean, however, refuses both the smoke and the tip before moving on.
Be safe.
You too.
The next day, his car conveniently breaks down, forcing him to stop and inspect it. Almost immediately, a gang of thugs chases a man into an alley, with screams trailing behind. Intrigued, Clean watches as the thugs mercilessly kick the man around. Just when their leader begins advancing on him, another thug stealthily approaches from behind and knocks him out with a baseball bat. Clean wakes up in the hospital with his head stitched up. As memories return, he recalls the moment when his daughter caught him self-administering drugs, forcing him to quickly hide his syringe. The doctor hands him a prescription, but Clean declines due to the tempting risk of dependency. Now off work due to liabilities, he expresses his concern to Travis that a day without purpose might tempt him back into his old habits. Later on his way home, he finds Diana sitting outside. She explains that her grandmother's away and her key is locked inside. Naturally, Clean invites her over for his renowned chicken dinner. Diana soon notices that he does not seem well, but Clean dismisses her concerns. Wandering about his place, she finds a wooden box and decides to open it. Suddenly, Clean stops her with a swift reaction. Startled, she instinctively dashes away. At Michael's mansion, he attempts to engage his son in conversation, but finds Mikey absorbed in composing a rap.
Rather be with my friends on the streets, making Mikey. And those old-ass parents said my boys is the village. The streets is my family, man. I know you can feel it.
This infuriates Michael and prompts him to confront his son.
You think those niggas are your family? The only reason your boys keep a punk like you around is because they know your father is the motherfucker.
In turn, Mikey brandishes a knife at his father before ultimately deciding to flee from home.
Okay, Kanye.
The next day, while driving, Clean notices Diana hanging out with a group of thugs near the abandoned house they have taken over. Concerned, he tells her to head home, but Diana coolly retorts that he isn't her father and has no right to boss her around. The men become aggressive and order Clean to leave. To prevent more trouble, Diana agrees to go home. After she leaves, Clean and the group exchange looks, but he decides it's still not the right moment to play the rage card and drives away. At the NA meeting, an ex-con newcomer with a heavily tattooed face gives Clean a skeptical look. Once outside, the man approaches him and remarks that Clean's face seems strikingly familiar. Although Clean denies knowing him and departs, the man recalls him as an associate of a notorious gangster. Afterwards, Clean sets about repainting another abandoned building to keep his mind occupied. As he works, his curiosity leads him to peer inside the structure and he suddenly sees a vision of his daughter. He breaks down the door to investigate further. Inside, he discovers a toolbox containing a pipe wrench, a weapon he had once used to take many lives. Believing it might be a sign from his daughter, he decides to keep it. Clean goes to check on Diana again and notices her bicycle parked outside the thugs' hideout. Inside, a group is indulging in smoking and heavy drinking, one of them being Diana. Feeling sick and disoriented, she stands to leave, but they stop her, intent on sexually assaulting her. One of the assailants even begins recording the scene on his phone. Meanwhile, Clean, accompanied by his new pipe wrench, heads to the door. Upon knocking, a so-called bouncer answers and flatly tells him they're closed. Noticing Diana inside, Clean finally decides to let his violent side resurface. His blows rain down and blood splatters everywhere while the music drowns out the sounds of the brawl. Mikey happens to be the man responsible for the attempted assault and the recording. He crumbles to the ground with a grievously injured face, his phone still capturing everything. Having saved the day, Clean wraps his arms around Diana and safely brings her back to her grandmother. The next morning, Michael stands over his severely disfigured son as the family's mob doctor warns that without surgery, young Mikey may lose his ability to speak forever. But Michael remains indifferent. He refuses the operation and insists on letting his son suffer as a harsh lesson. Later, he re-watches the recorded footage. Frank, a corrupt cop on Michael's payroll, digs up dirt on Clean. For the past 8 years, the man has been nothing more than a quiet garbage collector. There's no record of who he was before that. That said, Michael orders Frank to make a bloody mess of Diana and Ethel first, just to shatter Clean emotionally. As for Clean himself, Michael insists on keeping him alive, harboring plans far more severe for him. Sensing the impending danger, Clean tries skipping town with Diana and Ethel. Before long, a patrol car signals him to pull over. At first, he plays along until he catches a glimpse of the officers making a call. He has a feeling they are not just any cops but Michael's men. Without hesitation, Clean slams on the gas. A high-speed chase ensues and he eventually swerves off the main road and ditches the cops. Their next stop is a bowling diner where Clean, knowing their car has been marked out, prepares to steal a new car. Meanwhile, Diana takes Ethel to the restroom. While driving around, Michael's men notice Clean's car parked outside and roll up to the diner armed with their tomahawk axes. Just as Diana and Ethel are leaving, they see the axe-wielding maniacs heading their way and turn back. Outside, Clean waits in the stolen car. He notices one of the thugs in a nearby vehicle. Before the man can react, Clean swiftly takes him down with a screwdriver, proving he can turn any tool into a deadly weapon. He then swaps his screwdriver with the thug's axe. Meanwhile, the other thugs continue their pursuit as Diana and Ethel dash into the diner's back rooms. They find a hiding spot, but it offers little protection with their pursuers closing in fast. Just in time, Clean arrives and confronts them. The fight is brutal, but he overpowers them in a fierce axe battle. After rescuing Diana and Ethel, Clean takes them to a motel. There, Ethel blames him for their situation, but he promises to fix things. Before leaving, he thanks Diana for the bracelet she gave him. The movie then flashes back to the night that changed his life forever. Once upon a time, our needle assassin returned home from a job to find his drug syringe missing. He soon realized his daughter had used it, mimicking him after witnessing his habit. Tragically, she didn't survive. Clean goes back to the neighborhood and tells Travis about his situation with Michael. Travis urges him to flee, but Clean refuses, believing that Michael won't stop until he's dealt with.
How do you know? Because I wouldn't.
Leaving money for Diana, he heads toward what may be his final battle. Moving on to the thrift shop, he surprises the owner by asking for the pistol-grip shotgun. Though the gun is on layaway, he's offered an unregistered alternative. He also picks up a flare gun, thrown in for free. He starts gathering supplies and modifies the weapon, crafting a silencer from scrap and cutting off the stock. Meanwhile, at Michael's mansion, Frank gets a call from one of his men, informing him that every assassin sent after Clean is dead. Worse, he learns Clean's true identity, a feared legend in the underworld.
You sent me to kill the Grim f***ing Reaper.
Just then, the phone rings. Clean's on the other end, but remains silent until responding ominously to Michael's demand.
How'd you get this number?
Same way I got your address.
Clean begins preparing himself. He straps on a bulletproof vest and gathers an arsenal of weapons. A massive tattoo sprawled across his back serves as a permanent reminder of his violent past. Once ready, he makes his way to work, retrieving his garbage truck for what comes next. On the other hand, Michael has reinforced his mansion's security, ensuring every entrance is guarded. Frank assures him that with so many men stationed outside, no one can get through. However, within minutes, Clean proves them wrong. Sitting outside the mansion, he surveys the aftermath, every guard eliminated. He places an explosive on the electrical panel, using his burning cigarette as a delayed fuse. He then gets back into the truck and waits. Inside, Michael and his associates celebrate with drinks, unaware of the destruction about to unfold. Suddenly, Clean rams his truck through the house. At the same moment, the bomb explodes and the lights go out. Michael's men open fire on the truck, but Clean is already out. He takes down the first enemy with a single blast. Armed with his modified shotgun, he then moves room to room, eliminating his enemies with ruthless precision. He makes good use of all his weapons, particularly his flare gun, to put an awful end to Frank's life. Afterwards, Clean finds Michael's wife and she exposes where her husband is hiding. Following her pointed hand, Clean enters a room and instantly notices a missing weapon from a wall-mounted gun rack. Michael, lying in wait, opens fire, but Clean anticipates the ambush and dodges in time. The two engage in a hand-to-hand fight. At first, Michael gains the upper hand, overpowering Clean, who is momentarily distracted by his daughter's visions. He beats Clean mercilessly, but soon Clean regains his focus and turns the fight in his favor. Just as he's about to finish him, Mikey appears. Michael assumes the boy has come to save him, but instead Mikey furiously empties a handgun into his father, killing him instantly. He then turns to Clean, attempting to finish him as well, but his gun clicks empty. Sometime later in Utica, Diana cruises through the transformed neighborhood on her bike. The once troubled streets are safe again, and children laugh and play freely. That's all for today's video. If you enjoyed it, consider liking and subscribing to support the channel. If not, tell me why in the comments below. Thanks for watching and see you next time.